If you want to create beautiful and responsive sliders in WordPress, then this tutorial is for you. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can create responsive and super beautiful sliders with buttons, elements, text, boxes, and any layout that we want super easily. And we're gonna use a plugin that I really like, and that's Smart Slider. It's my new favorite slider builder. It's free. It has a premium version, but we are going to use the free version. It's really awesome. And I'm Andrew from WordPress, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. So we want to create sliders for our WordPress website, and we're gonna use this plugin as I told you, and we can have a really good control over the layout in different browsers. Actually, it's doing this by default because I have seen some old slider builders that are not really good or responsive, but this one works fine. You have to do something for it to be responsive. You have to change the text sizes, but it's really simple. I'm just gonna show you that. So I have gone and installed this plugin. If you do not have this plugin, just go ahead in plugins and add new, and then just search the name for Smart Sliders. You can also download it from the WordPress repository and upload it to your website. It's super easy, and I'm using Elementor only to hold this slider. It's totally unnecessary because I have nothing more in this website. If you are using any other theme builder, you can just go ahead and use that. You're not depending on any particular theme builder here. So let's see how it works. So when you install this Smart Slider, you have a new section here, and you can just click on that. You have a tutorial, and you can just head to the dashboard, and by default you get a slider. This is a default slider, and this is the slider that I have just built for this video, and we are going to create a similar one in a second. So you have your sliders here. You can just create a new project. Of course, every project is a slider, and then you can just click on that, and you can either start with a template, which will give you lots of options here, and you can just easily watch them, work with them, and get some inspirations and ideas from them. We're gonna start from scratch and build our own sliders, but it's highly advised that you just play with these sliders and look at them. But in this case, we're gonna create our own slider, and we can choose between slider and block. We want a slider. Block is something that is specific to this slider builder. We are going to use a slider, and in the free version, you can only use a simple slider. You can buy the pro version to get access to carousel or showcases, but in this case, we're going to use simple, and we can just color a slider anything that we want. I'm just going to call it awesome slider, and you can set the height and width. It's just fine for me. You can change it and play with it, but generally it just works very well with pictures, so you don't have to worry about this height and width. If you're not sure what you're gonna use, then this is probably just fine for you, but you can just look at other options as well. And we want a full width slider. We can have a box slider if you want. In this case, we're gonna play with the full width slider, but you can just change it so you get a box for your sliders, and it's not full width, and you can just style that. And we're just gonna click on create, and whenever you create a slider, you have an ID and also a shortcode. You can use this shortcode anywhere that you want. You also have access to this PHP code, but you don't need any of them because it will add its own Gutenberg block, and you can just use that block in Elementor or any other page builder that supports Gutenberg blocks, or even just in the WordPress editor itself. So you really do not need to copy and paste this shortcut. And we have here lots of options. So we can just change the size, and we can just limit a slider width in any mobile or device that we want. We can set breakpoints, but let's just forget about them and start building our slider. We will probably come back to these options after we make our own slider. So I can just add a slide here, and you can start with blank or other formats here, but just blank just is fine what we're gonna build. You can also, if you want to use an image, you can just add it here and then add other options over it, but you can just also do it in the blank. But let's just start with the image. So I'm just going to click on it, and I have a bunch of images here, and for example I'm just going to start with this grape image and just select it, and now we have our first slide. You can just click on edit, and as you can see we have the image, and I can just put anything I want here. We have access to this heading element that I can just put here and put a heading, and each one of them has its open options here on the right. So you have content, style, and also animation in the Pro version. But you can also add text elements here or images if you want, and also buttons. And you're probably thinking, okay, how do I get layout? And you can get pretty much any standard layout with this row option here. So you can just create 2 columns, and here you have 2 columns. I really do not, it's a little confusing because you get the name row here, and then you are getting columns. It's a little confusing. I think they mean that, okay, we can have, each row has a bunch of columns, so it just makes sense because we are not adding the columns, but we are adding the rows, and each row can have many columns, and you can just nest them if you want and put any element whenever you want. So you can just nest these rows and columns. Super easy, and it's actually the power of this slider, something that we really wanted in building a slider. So let's just create one, and I'm just gonna, let's just add an okay, let's just add a heading here, and I'm just gonna change this heading to, for example, awesome website, and also capital A. And then we can just bring the style, and we have the font family here. Among the available fonts, you of course have to have that font available in your WordPress theme, but if you have it, you can just type the name here. It's basically using the font family property of CSS. And then we have color and we have size. Unfortunately, one thing that I don't like about this plugin is that it's using pixels for sizes. We can actually compensate that with another option that it offers, but I think it was better than we had something like EM, a responsive unit. Unfortunately, we do not have, so we have to use pixels, but I'm just going to show you, and it's going to work for us. So we can just set it anything that we want. We also have this option to change the line height, so I can just set it to 1.2 or 1.1, and we have text align and decoration and basic typographic things. We have text shadow if you want. We have 3 numbers here, and each one of them just stands for one property. You can just control the shadow in the vertical axis and horizontal axis, and also the blur of it. We can just have it, you can just play with it. You can add your own CSS if you wish. And here we can change the background. Of course, we do not want to have background for a text, so just most of them just useless. And spacing and padding and some responsive options. And I told you that this pixel unit is not really suitable for mobile devices, because if I just change the viewport device, you can see that it's actually overflowing on mobile devices, but you can just fix that using this text scale. So if I just get this slider and reduce the size, you can see that now we are changing the size only for mobile devices. You can see the icon here, and if I just change it to tablets, you have the same result, or on a desktop computer and a large screen, we have the very same result. So it's just fine. I think it was better than if we use responsive units right off the bat, but it's just the way this plugin works. I hope that it gets updated in the future. And now we have it, so let's just add a button here. Again, we can change the label, we can set a link to it, we can set the font family, and the size. The size is just controlled. The size of the button is controlled with its text, and also you can just give it a shadow, a background color, And even you can have transparent colors here, transparent backgrounds, so we can control the opacity here. Super cool. Also, we can set a border radius here. Again, it's in pixels, not very good, and you cannot change this one based on your viewport device. You can see that we do not have an icon here. It's something that I hope they change in the future, because it's not really good that we have to use pixels and we cannot just change it. And we have the padding. This is the area around the button. We can just change it so we get more space here or less. And that's the things that we have. We can also get a hover effect. So as you can see, for the background, we have this hover, and also for the text. So for example, I can just select the hover for the background and then change this color to, for example, this pink color. You can see that it's now working, and I can just save it and check it on mobile devices and other devices as well. It's just working fine. And I can just go back, and now we have our first slide, so I can just add another one here. Again, we can use anything, but most of the time, of course, you probably want to start with an image, so it's just fine. I'm just gonna add this one. And now let's create columns. So we can just use this, and now we are getting a row and 2 columns here. So I can, for example, add a text element here and increase the size. Of course, be super careful again with these text sizes, because you want to make sure that you justify them for mobile devices, because we are using pixels. They're probably not set very good, but you can just get responsiveness very easily and effortlessly. So now we have it, and let's say I want to have a background here, so it just stands out. So I can just select this background image and add a color, and I can just change the opacity here. You cannot use this one actually. As you can see, this is actually, I think, a problem here, because this is using the opacity property of CSS, but it's in the background section, and it gives you this intuition that this should change only the opacity of the background, but actually it's just changing the opacity of the whole content. So we do not want to touch this. Instead, we're gonna use this bar here, and now we can change the opacity as we want. We can just again put buttons or anything we want. We can have more elements here, so I can just, for example, add another text element, and you can see that we have it. Or maybe you want to add a heading here, and you can just have that, or even here. So in the left column, it just works fine, and you can just give it anything that you want. You can have basic stuff. And there's one other thing that is usually a good thing to use, and because most of the time the text does not stand out on a layer, what I usually do is that I add the image. So for example, this tomato image, and I just click on edit, and then in the style I just use this background. So like, for example, I can just use a red background here and click on overlay. So it's just putting the color on the layer, but now I can just change the opacity. So if I just okay, not this opacity. Again, these opacities are really confusing here, but from here, from this color, so now you get something like this, and then you can just put the text over it, and it just works better. So we can just put the text here, and just again be sure to set the opacity correctly, and you can just put your content here. And now that we have our slider, we can just use it as I told you. So I have this slider, and in the front end I'm actually using my first slider, the slider that's just created for the demo, and you can really play with these options and get really good things there, basically really good. And they are responsive by the default, except for the sizes and text that I hope the plugin makers will change. But for the layouts, they have done a good job of doing responsiveness, so it's just working fairly good. You can see you can have gradients if you want. It's there, so when you set the color, you can just select gradients instead of colors. It just works the same way very easily. You can change even the text color when you hover over it. Some elements have hover icon, and then you can just use them super easily. And now we are using this, but if you want to change it, it's super easy. You can just bring element. If you're using shortcodes, then you can just replace shortcode. But in this case, we are using the widget. So if I just click on the widget, we have the ID here. So you can just either paste the ID here or just click on select slider and then select your new slider that you want to use. And that's, you just get your slider super easy. And finally, you can just work with these options. If I just bring the admin and select my slider, awesome slider, you can see that we have quite a lot of options here. You can change the way the controls look. So we have two options here. You can change the color. You can change the positions here, or show even thumbnails if you want to. You can change the animation. So by default it's horizontal. You can just change it to fade or crossfade or vertical. You can select either you want to have autoplay or not. You can do some optimization here for speed and something like this. You can just play with them. They're just really easy and intuitive to work with. And you can also change the layout if you want to from here. And also, one thing that I forgot to tell you, one feature I found about this is that when you have a text here, for example, a heading, so for example, I have this heading layer, you can use HTML markup if you want. It didn't tell anywhere, but for example, we can just wrap this element with a B tag. So I start a B tag here and end my B tag, and actually for this one it's not showing anything, but for example if I add a style here, style, and set for example color into black, okay, I should close it, and you can see that you can change the color for specific elements here, because you can paste any HTML if you want. So if you do not know HTML, it's just fine. You can just work the way it is, and you can also sometimes copy HTML and inline CSS because it will render them, and it's something cool that they didn't write here, but it just works and gives you the result. And that's it, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And like always, you can reach our team from the link in the caption.